Well, good evening. It's good to be back with you on the Kevin Cook Show. We've got Heidi Hollis on board with us, and we're going to have an excellent guest on, Tahni Cullen. That's relative to the book Josiah's Fire, and it'll really be an interesting story. It involves divine contact with the divine, and we'll get into all those issues right after the break. But we've got some good news pieces, Heidi. I know this will make you happy.
Cool.
The Supreme Court has upheld, for the most part, Trump's immigration ban.
This is not good news.
It's not? Well, good gravy. I would think it would be. And actually it should work. And also connected with that, there are tremendous demonstrations in Europe over the Muslim invasion that we don't hear about. And I just thought, those two stories would go hand in hand. And I just try to bring a little sunshine into your life whenever I can bring it.
I know.
I know you haul Muslims over here and sea train containers if you could. But,
that's not the case. I mean, with discretion, of course. I mean, that's. I get it. It's like there's a lot of stuff going on in the world that's not cool. So we've got to be on our P's and Q's.
Yeah, but you don't need to import it. But on another story, now this is more up your alley. I don't know if you're familiar with, this is circa way back in the 60s. You might have read about these UFO stories at Malmstrom and Minot Air Force Base, where actually UFOs seem to have had some interplay into nukes.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I have heard that. Mm-hmm.
Well, what it is, this guy dates back to that era, and it's ex-Air Force Captain David Schindele, that's Schindele, was a crew commander at Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota, and this is circa December 6, 1966, but he said UFOs destroyed 10 nukes at the base on that day. And like, the guy's a retired Air Force captain, he's not some kind of loony. And it was also reported in the Minot Daily News on December 6th at that same date. And Schindele basically said that he was told to keep quiet about it. And he's fixing to release a book on it. But it's similar to an event at Maelstrom Air Force Base in Montana, which is perhaps the more famous case. But, I mean, both situations occurred. And there was interplay between our nukes and these UFOs, and it was certainly nothing the Russians had. So, I mean, this is something pretty different, Heidi. I mean, it's kind of a revisit to historical stuff. But I kind of trust Air Force captains and military types because, for the most part, they're squared away people. And, also look at it this way. This guy's probably not writing a book to make lots of money. He's a retired Air Force captain, after all. I mean, he's not living under a bridge or anything. And also, he's no spring chicken to have been an Air Force captain in 1966. So I tend to see a certain credibility there, if you will.
Yeah, I get it.
But also, in my beloved New York, right outside of the suburb of New York, they saw an excellent video. And for people interested in that, they could go to the latest UFO sightings on the internet. But, Heidi, this was a really good shot of a UFO, classical UFO, way bigger than a drone. And it's on YouTube video that would show up. If you went to the latest UFO sightings, you'd see the YouTube video. But it was at 4:30 a.m. in the outskirts of New York. And, I guess what I'm saying is this is also something that's come up relative to, for example, SpiritDaily.com, I deal with them a lot, but they've highlighted that with all the cameras on phones and video and this and that, a lot of stuff is being seen, both UFOs and ghosts and even miracles. And Heidi, this is some real stuff here. The proliferation of these kind of things, Heidi, they're seeing, frankly, a lot of ghostly images on closed-circuit TV cameras.
Things are changing. I mean, things are really changing. It's getting The world, I don't know. They say the veil is lifting. It really is seeming like something's lifting because a lot is coming into focus. It's really crazy.
I know it is. Well, also with everybody being monitored on every street corner with cameras and hotels and this, that, the other. I remember one of the best ones I've seen, I might have mentioned on some previous show, but it was a museum in England where they had closed-circuit TV cameras eyeballing everything. And it was, they had a picture, a ghostly image of like a guy in a knight's uniform, not shining armor, but like medieval costumes, if you will. And he came out on the balcony. And this was not, you could tell from the image, it wasn't just a worker there, somebody playing, an actor, if you will. It wasn't anything like that. This was a ghostly image. And even SpiritDaily.com has highlighted this. I mean, there's stuff hopping and popping everywhere.
Wow, that's wild. Hey, did you hear the news that, the group hacktivist group Anonymous released a video saying that they believe NASA is on the verge of disclosing alien life being found. And they're not talking about microbes and stuff. They're talking about actual alien
intelligent life
places. Yeah. Yes. I'm like, I hope so. I really hope
so. Well, I guess, Heidi, I saw that. I was going to mention that to you as well. In that, the only guy that's really potent guy that I've had contact with as far as high security. Well, I've had high security clearance people like Green Berets and stuff, but I mean, Dr. Alexander that we interviewed some time back, and he has a tremendous security clearance working for the CIA for 20 years and being a Green Beret colonel. And he worked at White Sands, missile range and all that. What I'm saying is he said, take it to the bank. Don't even think for 10 seconds there are UFOs and that there's not alien life. He says it's as true as, matter of fact, he told me just like I was in his troop, like, what's the matter with you? How did you get to be a sergeant? Are you stupid or what? I mean, that, and I kind of like that, Right. But what I'm saying is, yes, it's clear as crystal that it happened. And don't forget that guy, Admiral Peter Hill Norton, that was basically equivalent to the British version of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who died in 2003. He said, yes, of course, there's alien life. We're here. We know they're here. We can't do anything about it. We don't know their mission, but they're here. And this guy was their British chairman of their Joint Chiefs of Staff. So all I'm saying is clearly it's there. People that are in the know have disclosed it. It's just clear as your hand. But yes, Anonymous, they've got some credibility because they do have a lot of intelligence there, and it's very possible that could happen. Now, Hillary Clinton made allusion to giving up the beans, but But anyway, unfortunately, we don't have Hill on. Well, no, fortunately, we don't have her. But at any rate, that's a whole other story. Let's go to our first break, and we'll be right back with Tahni Cullen. Well, it's good to be back with Heidi, and Tahni's going to be on with us. And just as an intro, Joe and Tahni Cullen were thrust into a nightmare when their 2-year-old son, Josiah, a typical toddler, suddenly lost his ability to speak, play, socialize. The diagnosis was Autism Spectrum Disorder, and Tahni felt like she'd been handed a prison sentence. How could a good God have allowed this to happen, and how can Tahni find hope for their future? In their attempts to see Josiah recover and regain speech, the Cullens underwent huge physical, emotional, and financial struggles. While other kids around him improved, Josiah only got worse. 5 years later, Josiah, who'd not been formally taught to write, read, suddenly began to type on his iPad profound sentences about God, science, history, business, music, strangers, and his heavenly encounters. Josiah's ongoing visions, revelations, and heavenly visits forced his family out of their comfort zone, predictable theology, and stagnant relationship with God, catapulting them into a mind-blowing adventure with Jesus. Now, this is an intro on the for the book, but Tahni, this is a heck of a story you've got here.
It is.
And actually, Heidi Hollis, who's on with us, my co-host, she actually has had encounters with Jesus herself.
Yeah. Memories of heaven out of the blue too. It's mind blowing. So I was extremely excited to hear you were coming on the show. I'm like, oh, cool.
Yeah, and it's actually a whole different deal when you're the parent of somebody who's having these experiences and you have not had them yourself.
Yeah. How cool that you're open-minded enough to take it for what it is, or how did you take it when this first started happening?
Well, it wasn't on my grid, for one thing. For my son, he's nonverbal and low functioning and severe.
Believe it or not, I'm an occupational therapist too, so that's...
So you understand.
I do.
So really, a lot of people would think, he has the mind of a toddler. He barely knows his shapes, his letters, his numbers. Gotcha. Well, we had been doing, I'm kind of fast forwarding a little bit, but actually I'm going to just tell you, I'm just going to answer your question and then we'll probably...
Lowe's has you covered for all those projects on your summer to-do list and will even help you save. Give your home a whole new look inside and out with $10 to $40 off paint, exterior stains, and resurfacers via rebate. And add a pop of color to your porch or patio with flowers. Get your choice 2 for $10 basic 1.5-gallon hanging baskets. All projects have a starting point. Start with Lowe's. Paint offer valid 6/21 through 7/5. Exclusions apply. Plan offer valid 6/28 through 7/5. Color and selection vary by location while supplies last. U.S. only.
Fill in the rest with other questions, but basically when it started happening that Josiah started coming out with things by typing on the iPad, things that he had never been taught, things that I didn't know, and then heavenly things. Honestly, it wasn't on my grid. It was happening. I knew I wasn't going crazy. And yet, I'm working at a church at that point. I'm a Christian that I didn't even know who I could safely share this with. That's how off the radar it was for me. Yet when something is happening to you, and it's happening to your child, it's happening in front of your eyes, what can you do but lean into it?
Yeah, true. That's cool. So you leaned in and you listened.
I became very good at asking questions.
Okay. And he was able to, what was more surprising, what he was writing or that he was writing?
Well, if you want me to just kind of build up to when this happened, I'll give you a little background.
Please
Sure.
do.
So, our little son, he was meeting all of his milestones. He was doing really great for the first almost 2 years of life. And then very suddenly, over about 3 weeks' time, he lost the ability to play. He lost the ability to respond to his name. He absolutely just seemed like he was in a whole nother world. He was spinning wheels on things. He wasn't responding to us. He lost the words that he had, several words that he had, words like mama and dada and banana. And it felt like we were losing him. And we were absolutely terrified because there was no reason why this should have happened from what we could tell. And so, that is the nature of this type of autism. There's classic autism, which people would say, well, there's been something kind of present since birth, kind of classic, symptoms, different things. This kind of regressive autism is a lot more prevalent today. So they will say that the classic type of autism is still probably about 1 in 10,000 people, whereas this kind of regressive autism is more like 1 in 50 kids today.
50?
1 in 50.
Holy man.
When Josiah was diagnosed, it was 1 in 150. And so that was almost 10 years ago. And so it's the leading childhood developmental disorder today. And basically, we get the diagnosis and the doctors say, autism spectrum disorder, no known cause, no known cure, lifelong. And you're staring at your 2-year-old child going, as a mother, And as a Christian, I'm going, okay, where is hope when there is no hope?
Yeah.
And,
Right. Yeah.
and what is our future, and what does his future look like? So, of course we mobilized. We did absolutely everything we could. We got him into the best, therapies, and, 40 hours a week of therapy, applied behavioral therapy, and speech and OT and all of those things, occupational therapy. But we weren't able to regain speech, despite even all the biomedical treatment and vitamins and diets. And man, there are so many things that you try. And at age 5, we were given the addendum to this diagnosis, which was he's nonverbal, he's severe, and he's like low functioning. So that means he's very much on the end of the spectrum, because the kids who have autism, kids and people who have autism, it's a very wide spectrum. Well, this is very much severe as far as self-help skills are impaired. Their ability to communicate functionally is very impaired. Developmentally, it seems that the receptive language is impaired. Sensory disorders, feeding issues, sleeping issues. It's very much a global developmental problem. But when we were finally told that Josiah would be one of about 40% of those with autism who would never speak, of course, that is one of the most devastating things to a parent, that you will never be able to have a conversation with your child.
Right. Know what they're thinking, feeling, need. Yeah, it's hard.
Exactly. And the older they get, the more frustrated they get that they're not able to communicate.
Yep.
And so, we had gotten iPod Touches back when they first came out, and we noticed that our little son had, been kind of interested in that. So we had put a couple of, preschooler apps on there. When I heard the iPad was coming out, I was like, man, I am going to be first in line to pre-order that thing, because that is going to be helpful for kids with autism, I believe. And so we got the iPad, and one of the first things that I saw was that even though he couldn't physically do certain puzzles, like at his therapy center, he had an app that had puzzle pieces, and he was able to put the puzzles together, and they'd make a big fancy sound. And I'm going, okay, for one thing, is it that he doesn't understand, or that there's some sort of gap between what he knows and what he can do? So that was kind of a big clue to me. But then I went to a conference, and there was a breakout session about activities for the nonverbal child. And it was there that it was absolutely devastating to me to see them talking about those that were in their teens, and how they said, a lot of these kids in school, we just try to keep them calm. They can be very violent. And unlike the kids with Down syndrome and other diagnoses, with these kids, if we can teach them maybe to like crush cans or shred paper, that's basically kind of what we're going for. And I was like, that's my son's future, crushing cans and shredding paper? That's what I have to look forward to?
Yeah.
And I actually saw a documentary called A Mother's Courage. And in that documentary, I saw a child that was very much presenting like my son. And one of the things, it was even a short stint within the documentary, there was a woman who was doing what was called the rapid prompting method. And these kids that were, looked like they weren't even paying attention, or like they didn't even know what was going on. Suddenly they are engaging, and they're able to learn, and they're able to spell by pointing at letters. And on stencils, starts with a stencil board, goes to like a laminated board, and eventually, hopefully, keyboard. And so I thought, I have to do that. So I went to Green Bay, Wisconsin. There was one place there that did it. And I saw that he was in there. The one thing that she told me that really changed my heart was, we need to presume age-level intelligence. So suddenly I started looking at him differently, talking to him differently and realizing, you know what, he's in there and I need to show him that I know he's in there. And he was showing that he was understanding things. We had done that particular method for about a year.
How old was he at that stage?
At that time, he was 6.
Okay.
And so we had done that particular method for about a year. It was slow going, but again, we were finding some, like, he was in there. He was making correct choices. I thought I'm teaching him how to spell. But we get about a year in and we do a refresher course. And after that refresher course, I was revitalized again. About a month after that, I'm sitting at the table with him and we're doing a lesson on a Saturday night. And I decided to read to him from the children's Bible. And so I read to him about how Jesus healed the blind man. And then I said, Josiah, Jesus healed the blind man. What did Jesus do? Did he H-E-A-L heal the blind man, or did he P-L-A-Y play with the blind man? You write that on a piece of paper, rip it in half, you tap on heal, you tap on play. He chose appropriately the one that said heal, and I said, okay, let's spell heal. Now, we had the stencils, but I had downloaded an app on the iPad that is like the alphabet in order in big square buttons. And so we were experimenting with both. So he goes to spell what I am giving to him, heal. Okay, let's spell heal. But he touches G. And I'm like, oh, okay, he's missing it. Then he touches O. I'm like, go? He goes on to spell his first ever independently driven sentence.
Wow.
God is a good gift giver.
Nice.
Wow.
You got chills, I bet.
What started. That day, that moment is what shifted everything.
Amazing. So after you picked yourself off the floor,
Exactly.
what happened after that? So you're like, did you go to your husband like, oh my gosh, this
Yeah, I
happened?
certainly, honestly, I felt like, okay, either I've cracked or I'm on candid camera, or am I being punked? Like, what is going on here? I honestly felt like, what in the world? And actually, I thought he was being healed, if I'm honest. Like, we've been praying that he would be healed, and, we've been praying for years and I honestly thought, like, oh my gosh, he's being healed right now. Like, it wasn't just, to me at that point, it wasn't just he's gaining communication. I'm like, something has happened. I go back and ask him, Josiah, yes, that's true, but like, how do you know that? Because it's not like I go around saying God is a good gift giver. It's not like he was parroting anything. And then he goes on to type, God is very capable. And then that entire weekend, my husband had been out of town, and I'm calling him, I'm calling my mom. I'm like, you won't believe what just happened. I'm just freaking out. That entire weekend, I just start asking him every question I want to know, like, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite cartoon character? We're like having these conversations. What do you want to be for Halloween? All this stuff.
So you didn't let him sleep, huh?
I didn't. He was a little. I think he was surprised too, and I think I was surprised. But but that's what started it. But then, as time went on, he started writing stuff that was like, wait a second, he's never been taught this, and where are you getting this stuff? And it really started with, I had brought home a little lizard. I had been on a vacation or a little trip, and I brought home a lizard, and I'm like, well, what do you want to name it? And I'm asking him different things, and he starts talking about like the anatomy of the lizard.
Really?
And how they have he says they have ageless tails. And he starts saying, like, a lot of people think they have scales, but it's actually aspiration pores and all this stuff. And I'm like, how do you know this? I mean, I know at school you're not getting that.
And he's 7 years old at the
you
time.
wouldn't get that unless you were in some kind of advanced biology class. No.
No, so my husband and I start like, I'm like, look up these things like on the web, like what does it say about lizards, So we're like looking this up, and it's like, oh well, ageless tales, like, okay, if a lizard loses its tail, it actually will grow back. Like, that's what that means. That's what he means by that.
Tahni, we're coming just about to the top of the hour break, the bottom of the hour break, but we'll be right back. And this is fascinating stuff. It really is.
Yeah.
But we'll be right back after the break.
Absolutely.
Well, it's great to be back with Tahni and Heidi, and I'm so glad that I came across this information about you on spiritdaily.com. It's this is some really good stuff. Let me go ahead and step out of the picture for a minute, because you were telling about all this developing information and endless tales or of the lizard and stuff that this kid could no way, never been exposed to.
Yes, and then he started, excuse me, he started sharing things that were like of heaven somehow. He started having like these wisdom words, things like, faith is believing for kites to fly when there's no wind in sight.
Oh,
wow.
And faith is picture it done. And these kind of like quotes, these kind of like sayings. Well, and then he started talking about things that I'm like, what are you seeing? What are you hearing? I was just very confused as to where all this was coming from, because even though, we talk about Jesus in our house, it's not like these were things that he would just be picking up from our conversations or from the TV or things like that. It was different. And he was very poetic in the way that he was writing. And one day I decided, well, I got to test this. Like, I'm just going to test this. And I said, Josiah, could you fill in the blank for me? My favorite place in heaven is, and he goes on to write his very first poem like this, or what he calls a song. And he writes this: my favorite place in heaven is over peaceful waters. Peace is real. Tired souls naturally test peace. Roses are so stunning. Worship the King. Sing loud to the prize pardon who requires praise. Angels taste of his holiness, ordained great attitude of praise. Help us worship the Lord together, please him. All you hail the King of majesty forever. Make a noise to the King on the throne.
I got goosebumps. Wow.
And he, he can be very, very slow in writing things. Like, it's almost like the words themselves come quickly, but his motor skills are the difficult part. But that he wrote so fast, and I'm going, okay, for one thing, I can't sit down and just write a poem or anything like that. For another thing, I don't know how you write something like that unless you've like experienced it somehow.
It does sound experiential instead of just philosophical. Yeah, it does.
Exactly. So that's what kind of took it to the next stage or the next level, and then things just kept compounding from there.
Wow.
So what happened next? So he's expressing this love and admiration for God, but it got even more personal, right?
Yes, it got very personal. I mean, he started talking about people that were family members that he had never met.
Oh, really?
He started talking about very specific things that he would have never known about, and even things that I or others that he communicated this to, like, had not even thought of for, I mean, you don't just sit around and think about somebody who died like many, many years ago, and then there'd be something that was like a particular thing that was like, whoa, that is so true. And then he would talk about angels, seeing angels. Now, I want to tell you, like, people might be going, oh, that is so cool. Well, as a parent, and actually as a person who's like working in a church, who's a pastor, like, I was not super excited about what was happening here, because again, this is not like on my grid. I don't quite know what to do with this. I don't want to shut it down. I want to be open, because I know that, like, the kid, isn't really capable of just dreaming this stuff up. This
Right.
isn't like imagination gone wild.
Right. I see.
Like, that's not even a tendency of people with autism. Really don't tell tall tales.
So did it strike you right away that this is a real thing happening, or did it take a little bit for it to sink in that God is involved somehow?
I knew it was a real thing that was happening from the beginning, because I don't know how else it could have been. Probably the hardest thing is you're dealing with what others might think, right?
Yeah.
Has she lost it? Is he hallucinating? Is this schizophrenia? I mean, all of those things, all of those possibilities. Is she
Yes,
trying
but uncommon knowledge,
him...
knowledge like that, that's not hallucinating, though. I mean,
right,
to have
but
uncommon
you don't necessarily tell a psychologist like, yeah, my kid is hearing voices and seeing angels.
Oh,
it's not something you lead with. So yeah, there's kind of this struggle between, oh my goodness, God is real. He is there. My son is somehow like experiencing something. And honestly, my heart and my husband, I mean, obviously, not only are we getting to have just regular conversations with our kid, it's not like he only writes spiritual things. We were able to know like he had a rock in his shoe. I mean, that's helpful. That's helpful information.
When you're talking here, I'm feeling and I'm hearing like this reality that essentially smacked you, and I get it. I've been in that situation. As Kevin shared, I wrote a book called Jesus Is No Joke. I called it that because that's all I could say repeatedly. Like, this man is for real. He's no joke. I mean, when
Lowe's has you covered for all those projects on your summer to-do list and will even help you save. Give your home a whole new look inside and out with $10 to $40 off paint, exterior stains, and resurfacers via rebate. And add a pop of color to your porch or patio with flowers. Get your choice 2 for $10 basic 1.5-gallon hanging baskets. All projects have a starting point. Start with Lowe's. Paint offer valid 6/21 through 7/5. Exclusions apply. Plan offer valid 6/28 through 7/5. Color and selection vary by location while supplies last. U.S. only.
When the reality of, we're all taught, about faith and to keep a certain habit of things, but when it's really, really real, it is a whole other level. So I get it. I really get it.
It really becomes you dealing with the reality of your own ego and reputation. When you're going, I know this is real.
Yeah. But
what will people think of me if I talk about it? If I go to places that it's like, okay, what is that person smoking?
Personally, I couldn't keep my mouth closed. I'm like, look, when God's looking your way, there's no shame. That's how I feel.
I actually had to, from a Christian perspective,
Yeah.
I had to learn about the gift of prophecy. I had to learn because my son was demonstrating prophetic gifts.
Yes.
And I guess different people can call it different things. I choose to call it prophetic. Someone might call it psychic. But I choose to call it prophetic, that he was able to relay things from heaven's perspective that they rang true. And they were a language and a cadence that was different than anything else, except that it was confirmation of this God that is actually talked about very distinctly in the Bible, but we kind of have our own dogma around it. This was free of dogma. This had no agenda. It just was so pure, and it did something inside of my heart. I started loving Jesus and God so much more. And, one morning Josiah woke me up and he would wake up a lot in the middle of the night, which is not the greatest for me. But I'd stumble out, I stumbled out and I'm like, what do you want to communicate? And so he's like, God wants to tell you about the Trinity now.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, okay. Or he said the triune God. And I'm like, okay. When I say said, he typed it. I'm like, okay, I can't say I was thinking about the Trinity, but okay, what does he want to say? And so he writes, in the Trinity, the Father is the manager, the Son is the lover of operations, Holy Spirit is worker, so it's 3 in 1 getting things done. The world was created only by 3 functions that went like this. The Father thought it, the Son loved it, Holy Spirit carried out the plan. That is how
Nice.
the Trinity works, Mom. Father, Son, Holy Spirit lack nothing. They all talk together about how things should go. Life is simple if you know that He is Papa, He is healer, He is helper. So man must voice, Father, what do you think? Jesus, what do you love? Spirit, what should we do about it? This is your mission. Do what the Father thinks and what Jesus loves and what the Spirit tells.
Beautiful. Gosh.
Wow, this isn't stuff from a kid. I mean, this is definitely not something that would emanate from a child.
Well, his lack of practice of speaking in sentences like you and I would do, I wonder if that comes into play, or is this truly, from above in the way that they're expressing it to him? It's magical.
Well, he would talk about being in school, like being taken up and almost getting like schooled in heaven.
Oh, my goodness. I know what he's talking about. Are you serious? Has he described the buildings he goes inside?
He talks about open air with like almost triangular desks. And he talks about there are like different places. One place almost looks like Chinese with like the canopies and like the open air sides. He talks about sitting at a triangle, like almost like 50 or so kids, almost sitting at a triangle. They solve problems in a triangular form using this formula.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
So it's just like, it's really wild, but what's really cool is I didn't have a grid for this. I didn't even know, like, okay, the kid is not having, it's not like this is a near-death experience. He's not on any drugs. He's not, going under surgery. How is this happening? So I started like trying to figure this out and trying to look into this. Who is this happening to? The only one I could find was Akiana, who's typical, not with autism. But this is the wild thing. Within the last 3 months, people that have heard our story have contacted me, and the same thing is happening with a lot of other kids with autism that learned exactly the same way to communicate, and they're coming out with the same things. And actually, just a week and a half ago, we went to a camp where these guys got to meet each other and communicate with one another, like in a social way.
Nice. I gotta tell you something. This is a phenomenon. Believe it or not, people are waking up with memories of being in a heaven-like place, and others, unfortunately, are waking up with memories of a hell-like place. And the revelations that are coming forward, I've had similar things, but I, over the years, have come across so many others. So it's magnificent for, the kids with, the difficulties in everyday life are able to tap in such a pure manner. This is awesome. This is unbelievable. Well, I
think that's for me as his parent, I started realizing, there are gaps that I cannot reach, no matter how hard I try, no matter what I do. I can't make him be better. I can't make him respond. But in that space of weakness, God is filling certain gaps. And I think that in a lot of these children and a lot of these people, that there is like this gap. Somehow they find God. They reach for him because he's what they've got. Or he reaches for them and assures them that he's there. I'm not sure. But it's a really beautiful thing because, like I said, it doesn't have an ego and it doesn't have an agenda. It's just beautiful.
Wild.
Remarkable.
Yeah. My goodness. So the other kids that you said they all got together and they're sharing and discussing among themselves, like, did any of them recognize each other from being in the heaven school like place?
Well, we didn't discuss that exactly at camp, but there was a time that one of the kids that actually ended up going to camp, Josiah, and he had kind of a back and forth conversation through email, and it's almost like they did like this call and response thing where they like knew this, they knew the answer, like they were speaking the same type of language. And like, you too, and then the one responded back, and then they were like, they knew the same, like, almost like ditty or something.
Yeah.
It was really weird. It was really cool, but it was really like, okay, they're like on some, like, the same network.
How many kids got together?
Well, at the camp, there were actually it was a camp for special needs, but of them, there were about 7 that had like this severe autism that's how they speak, is by pointing at letters using this rapid prompting method. And so that was incredible because you know what? Their ministry wasn't just, it was church camp. Their ministry wasn't just, we're putting on a service or chapel for these kids. They would get them involved and say, do you have a word for somebody? Do you have something that you want to add? It was absolutely incredible.
Wow, goodness. So it's gotten more intense over, I mean, like, how long has he been speaking on these things? I mean, how many years have passed now?
3.5, 4.
Has
Almost
things
4.
changed? Is he talking about future events, what we need to do as a society, or?
Well, we have a Facebook page called Josiah's Fire. I actually started it before we ever wrote a book or ever planned on writing a book. And every day we pretty much post something that is a quote or a poem or a thought. And there's some pretty profound stuff there. But one of the things, if I may share, that was one of the most powerful things, was I was with Josiah at the zoo. We went to an IMAX theater presentation. And afterwards I said, okay, where do you want to go? Do you want to go back into the zoo? Do you want to go somewhere else? So I pull out the iPad and he spells, take me to the Mall of America and God will have a surprise for you there.
Really?
And I was like, okay, like what could that be? So we go to the Mall of America. I get him his McDonald's burgers. I go to Noodles. We're sitting eating our food and we get done. And all of a sudden we're like walking and I always have his hand. And he starts like leading me somewhere. Yeah. And I'm thinking he must be going to the toy store or something, but he leads me down this corridor and he sits me down at this bench. He motions for my purse to take my iPad out. And he goes on to tell me that I need to talk to the nice girl that's placing little stairs his way. And I'm like, who are you even talking about? I don't see anybody that you're even talking about. And then he goes on to write, love is love, tell her that. I'll be forced to voice my love for her myself. Now is the time to work the floor like it's party time. Tell her words. Tell her words. Take her breath away. Tell her that love is born out of choosing God, not choosing Wicca, which is like witchcraft.
Yeah.
Hope is love, not more daddy issues. Pick a spiritual daddy. It is boy's father. It is God. Choose him, not a brotherhood of robbers, because you need me, God says. And I'm like, oh my gosh. First of all, I'm like, my heart is pounding like, I'm not going to have to tell this to somebody, am I? I'm like freaking out about that. Secondly, I'm looking around going, who is he even talking about? And so I'm looking around and all of a sudden, way back, kind of around the corner, I see like this group of 20-somethings standing there. And this one girl kind of has like a black kind of, I don't know, like longish coat on. And I'm like, oh, that must be the witch.
Gothic. Yeah.
And so I'm like, am I going to have to go over there? I'm wrestling with this. All of a sudden they come and they turn and they come in front of our bench. And I knew it was like now or never. I got to just jump up. And I'm like, excuse me, are you very spiritually inclined? And she's like, yeah, I guess. And I'm like, okay, I explained to her about Josiah. I think I might have a word for you. Can I just read it to you? And at that time, there were no spaces or punctuation in what he wrote. So I'm like literally reading it, not lifting up my eyes from the iPad where it has all of these words just running together. And I read it and I look up and I say, does that make any sense to you? And she goes, no, not really. And my heart just sunk. I thought, oh my goodness, we totally missed the boat. The girl next to her in a sunny, bright yellow tank top, beautiful bob hair, beautiful blonde hair. She goes, that's not her. She takes her tank top, shows me a 5-point pentagram tattoo on her chest. She says, that's me. I am in Wicca, and I've been told I have daddy issues. And I'm like freaking out right now. And I'm like,
Sure.
whoa, okay, sorry, the cape threw me off. Okay, never mind. Are you like, what is this? Like, honestly, how could this happen that in the biggest mall of America, that somehow in time and space, God, the God of the universe, the God of the Bible, chose to intersect with your life to get you a message? I mean, that's pretty freaky.
Wow. Was she blown away? Did she take it to heart?
She goes, well, I haven't even been to church since I was in 9th grade. I was a Lutheran. Wow. And I'm like, okay, well, I said, hey, and I just like loved on those guys. Like her, her friends are like, I think it means that you need to get out of Wicca, Sam.
That's so.
And it was just funny. I'm like giving them hugs. I think they thought I was totally crazy. But I said, hey, I'll send this to you. If you give me your email address, I'll send this to you. And, I just blessed them. And, we talked a little bit. I never heard back from her again. Maybe she gave me the wrong email address. I have no idea. But what that did for me was it said this, you know what? God loves people that don't even love him back, that aren't pursuing him, that are even opposed to him. And the love that I had for people, all people, just grew so much that day because I thought God will literally move heaven and earth to get to somebody. And it was just such an awesome, awe-inspiring experience.
I bet. Wow. That's wild. So what do you feel, I mean, when you get these kinds of hints like that, what do you feel is the point? What is the main point of it all? To get people back to church, to their faith, to God?
Well, here's the deal. I really think that all of this is happening like literally in the most mundane and even chaotic life. Josiah still has the symptoms of autism. He still very much has behaviors and all these things. It's not like he's like this Zen kid who's just like, oh, I'm so contemplative and I'm just coming out with this stuff. It's just like in the middle of the most mundane and even chaotic, just everyday life. Wow. And yet what I'm seeing is, I think God's going like, if you choose me to intersect within your everyday life on even the littlest things, you will start seeing me like everywhere and in all these people, and you'll start seeing me even like my eyes open to even what nature, fills me up with gratitude about, or seeing different signs out there that go, that was a wink from God. Like I'm recognizing that. I'm not going to reason it away anymore because this is so real. If it is not real, I'm either a crazy person or like some, really bizarre, this is a really bizarre scheme or something. But I know this is real. This is happening. And to me, it says God is there. He cares about people. And this is the other piece, is that whereas heaven is often talked about as like this crossing over place, this very far chasm away from us, and our loved ones are up there and I don't know, dancing on a cloud somewhere. Actually, until the redemptive plan of Jesus Christ is carried out in this earth, all of heaven is actually turned toward and oriented toward what we are doing here on earth. They care about what we are doing right now. They can often see us. They even like declare things over our lives so that we might come into our design and our destiny. You know, it's a beautiful thing because heaven is far more interactive in our world, I think, than we give it credit for. And I think, you know, aside from obviously the piece with the book, that I want to bring hope to people who have difficult situations where they've been having faith and they wonder if God's even there, if he even sees. You know, maybe they have a kid with autism, maybe they have a sickness that just has lingered, maybe they know this journey of faith and fear and doubt.
Well, now Tahni, we're coming up right to our top of the hour break, but it's fascinating stuff. We'll be right back. Well, it's great being back on with Tahni and Heidi, and we were talking on the break about, you talked with linguists about the language that some of these messages have come in, and what were they saying? It's something unknown to them or foreign?
Yeah, well, I spoke to one lady who she's a linguist by profession, and she said, I've studied thousands of languages. She actually was a Bible translator, but also has studied many languages. And she says, I can't, like, this doesn't have a meter or a type that is, that I can put in a particular, like, language category or culture pocket. It's just, like, different, but again, it rings true. It's like it lacks, his writings lack cliche. You know, for me, if I'm writing poetry or something like that, I don't care as hard as I try. If you say it's raining, I'm going to be like cats and dogs, cats and dogs, cats and dogs. Like it's raining cats and dogs, you know?
Yeah.
He just has a way, like just yesterday I posted this on Facebook. He wrote, you know, daily rays of golden sun find us first, and we hold our life in light and face the gift of wonder. If God is the Father of lights, we can see his faithfulness in the sun and moon and stars. We can bank on this permanence if we need a fact to look on with faith.
Holy smokes.
I mean, that's the kind of stuff that he comes out with.
He's 10 years old now, you say?
He's 11. He's 11.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
And so, you know, it's just one thing after the other like that. Just the way that he languages things is kind of, it's unlike, it's just not schooled, you know, it's not, it's not what somebody has taught him, you know, how to write. One day he said, Mom, I want to write a book, like a kid's book. And I was like, okay. Okay, I guess we could do that. Like what? He's like, it's called Little Prince of My Heart. And I'm like, okay. And so the time goes on, and then he's like, I'm ready to write my book now. And I'm like, how does one do this? Like, you want to do an outline or what? He's like, no outline. And he goes on for like the next 2 hours, you know, and I'm having to like, I mean, it's not like he sits down and like, oh, I'm typing like a regular, like I have to sit beside him. I have to get him, you know, I got to put the iPad up for him, you know, all this stuff. So one little letter at a time with his pointer finger, he writes this beautiful, like, it's almost like an allegory about a kid in a tin suit who breaks out. And it was a beautiful story. And I thought, I don't get it, but it's amazing how this is happening and how these things come to you. It's almost like his first language is like a poetic expression.
So how did you get this pulled together to reach the world? I mean, like you said, it's like once you're sitting there alone getting these messages, but you know, then to put it into a book, I mean, that's a big feat.
I never thought I would. It actually, like, honestly, God opened up the doors. I just had nothing. I had no intent to force anything or do anything like that. I actually just started kind of sharing my story. And we had done like the Facebook page because Josiah wrote to me one day, I tell you all these, things, but you never put them on Facebook. This was years ago before we did the book. And I'm like, how do you even know what Facebook is?
Yeah, that's a darn good question. I know it.
And so I was like, okay, well, I'll do a Facebook page and, well, maybe my mom will look at it and a few of my friends, Well, today we have like almost 17,000 people from all over the world on the Facebook page. But I started sharing the story. And there was a lady Cheryl Ricker, who co-authored the book with me. She happened to be at this event that I was sharing our story at. And she comes up to me and she's like, have you ever thought of co-authoring a book? She said, I'm a writer. I actually write people's miracle stories. And God told me, she had never come to this. She said, God said, you will find your next project here.
Huh.
Really?
And I said, well, you did not, I literally skimmed the surface, and this is going to take a while. So I went to her house in Rochester, Minnesota, and spent the weekend with her. And anyway, we decided to write this book together. And the collaborative was really probably the only reason it got written, because it's very hard to write a book.
Oh, it's terrible.
You really want to quit about 1 million times, and you just are kind of like, why am I even doing this? And
now let me ask you this, Tahni, where's the best place to get it? Is it? I guess I'm sure it's at Amazon and
Amazon.com. Amazon.com. It's in Barnes and Nobles. And christianbook.com. You can also go to josiahsfire.com. And we also have a second book that just got released just a couple months ago, and it's called The Good Gift Giver. And it's a 21-day devotional.
Oh, that's very good. That's very good.
Yeah, we springboard off of Josiah's quotes, write little daily devotionals about the reflection that we had from them, and then add scripture and meditation and journaling opportunities.
Well, have you ever spoken with Michael Brown, the spiritdaily.com editor? Because that's where I saw your information was on.
No, actually, I didn't even know that he did an article on us until you contacted us. So he did.
Well, no, it's highlighted on that. It's highlighted on there a lot, and of course now Heidi's a Protestant, but I'm a Catholic. But obviously this goes across.
You'd be surprised how many Catholics really have embraced this book, because it talks about.
Oh, I know. Well, see, spiritdaily.com is a Catholic website, of course. I mean, and it's tremendous, and I see it on there all the time. He's highlighting the book.
Well, yeah, I've actually been surprised how well it has been embraced. Certainly there are people that have theological issues with it. I'm a person that...
I was going to ask about that, because I've run into that wall before. It's like, no, really, this is Christian. I'm talking from a Christian perspective. They're like, all you need is the Bible. It's like, I understand that, but God still speaks to us today.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
I get that.
That's been the biggest thing, is like, in no way, I'm a student of the Word of God. I was a ministry director, a pastor at a church. I'm a very sound person in my theology, and so bringing some of this stuff forward even challenged some of my own thoughts and my own notions. But I really had to test it and, just bring forth what I did. And actually, I've been very pleasantly surprised across many denominations, and actually those that are even not churched, and even, some people in even like New Age circles are kind of looking at this going, okay, I recognize some of this. They are kind of like coming at it from a different angle, but like I'm seeing something here, and it's ringing true to me.
That's cool.
And so it's been very interesting. I'm surprised how many people have actually embraced it. And certainly there is a sector of people who say it really is that idea that God doesn't speak anymore. He's done revealing things. And if you want to get information about God or heaven, it's all in the Bible and you don't need anything else. And basically that idea that like this must be inspired falsely.
Yeah. That's the challenge.
That's fine. You know what? I want people to wrestle with it, and I want them to study it out themselves, and I want them to discern. So that's totally fine, and I don't have to convince them.
Question for you: does Josiah, does he describe feeling as if he is going to heaven at certain times? I mean, what is he just seeing visions? What is it? How does he describe?
Yeah, there's actually a chapter in the book that we address that specifically, because I actually asked him kind of point blank. As he matured, his writing even was able to mature. I think for a while he wasn't really able to explain, like he's explaining things, but I'm trying to figure out what he's saying. And then it got more and more where it's almost like he was understanding more what he was saying and able to put context to it. And so,
is he able to verbalize any better now with this?
He still doesn't speak with his mouth.
Oh, okay.
But he basically explained to me that, various things. One is that at night when he falls asleep, that it's like he's taken up to heaven, like an angel comes and like takes him into a heavenly space. Where it's like he's in his mind and his spirit. And he might learn things, he might see people, he might experience certain things that God leads him to, or different people. He talked about a time like basically like there are certain things that, in heaven God allows you to like see sound. Like see what sound looks like. So like there's like these crossing over of senses that he brings forward. Hearing things, seeing things that are like amplified many, many times. And so like there's really some cool stuff that he'll talk about, that is really wild. But and then he also says that he will at times like hear, like
Lowe's has you covered for all those projects on your summer to-do list and will even help you save. Give your home a whole new look inside and out with $10 to $40 off paint, exterior stains, and resurfacers via rebate. And add a pop of color to your porch or patio with flowers. Get your choice 2 for $10 basic 1.5-gallon hanging baskets. All projects have a starting point. Start with Lowe's. Paint offer valid 6/21 through 7/5. Exclusions apply. Plan offer valid 6/28 through 7/5. Color and selection vary by location while supplies last. U.S. only.
Hear in his ear, say like an angel, sometimes, sometimes even dark entities can be drawn to kids like these.
Yes.
To intimidate them, especially. So, we have to deal with some of that, what I would call spiritual warfare as well. And, but he can hear, sometimes can see in the spirit. A lot of these kids actually will see colors on people, where they can see even like colors around people.
Like their aura type thing.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So there's some of that. But sometimes you can tell like whether it's just coming like straight from his thoughts and filtering through. And sometimes it almost seems like he will write almost like he's dictating what's being told to him.
As he's listening. I got it.
Yeah, because it's just a different, it's just different than what he usually would just write. You know what I mean?
Something I have to tell you, when I first had, when Jesus showed up, I mean, immediately after I had my first encounter with him, a demonic thing came my way, and it was terrifying. And I'm like, what on earth? And someone told me, they said, well, now I know you're telling the truth. I'm like, what do you mean? They said, well, that's outright, a typical follow-up to a Jesus encounter. Yeah, I know.
I don't mean to interrupt, but it's our last break.
Yes.
Well, time is going quickly. I guess it always does on good shows like this, because snap your fingers and the whole time is gone. But Tahni, this is some excellent material, and I'm glad that I picked it up on spiritdaily.com. And golly, it's synchronistic that Heidi has had some of the same experiences.
Yes,
But,
we have definitely have to get in touch.
Absolutely.
Honestly, right? I mean, it's really wild. I mean, I don't run into people, who gets this and understands, we're getting messages. I mean, I don't know. Something's going on where a lot of
and I think
people are in touch
the
like that.
the church needs to wake up.
Catch up, yes.
And
yes.
not be afraid of this stuff, but know that God has communicated in this way for millennia.
Yes.
And just because we're good, reasonable people who, did all, follow all the religious rules, doesn't mean that God has changed his tone.
Exactly.
And so if he's choosing to communicate in this way, there's a Bible verse that says he will use the simple things to confound the wise. And he also says that we have to have hearts like children, or we won't even be able to enter into the things of the kingdom of heaven. So, I think in our perceived wisdom and our reasoning and all this stuff, that has really seeped within even the walls of the church, that we haven't left a lot of room for the Spirit of God.
Yeah.
I believe it. It's there's different things that reach different people, and I always think that when they're ready, they'll get the message. But time feels short for some reason. Like, we've got to get to this already and start opening up some eyes, ears, and souls out there. I don't know. And
I think that there's this thing, it's not just with kids with autism, but I believe that in this time, we're talking about Joel 2, where it says, that your daughters and your sons, they'll dream dreams, see visions, all of these things, they'll prophesy. Well, I think that we're in the generation where, honestly, the voices of the children are trying to be silenced. It's almost like the enemy is coming against these voices that actually can bring so much more good into the world. And actually, I was so shocked that someone told me that, there's Generation X, there's Generation Y, that kind of stuff, that they're actually calling this generation the silent generation.
Wow.
And I just thought, that is chilling to me. Our kids today need to be nurtured to be able to bring in a much better way of looking at
sorry,
things.
Sorry, guys. I didn't mean to kick out on you.
Oh, we didn't even notice.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I'm not much use to this interview.
Us ladies are just chatting away. We're just feeling
that's
the
okay.
moment.
I tried to negate a call, and when I did, somehow it kicked off the Skype on that. But guys, listen, it's been great having you, Tahni. It really has. And,
I really appreciate you guys getting in touch with me.
Oh, Tahni, we're going to chat after this, girlfriend.
Absolutely.
I have to get a hold of your information. I'll grab it from Kevin.
Sure.
Mine's in the back of my book too. So.
I'm going to read your book now.
Awesome. That is so awesome. I'm getting yours.
Please do. We'll compare notes.
Heck yes.
Okay. Well, Tahni, you take care, and what we'll do is we'll send you a link to the show, and so you can use it wherever you want to use it or what have you.
Sounds great. Well, I really appreciate connecting with you guys.
Yes, you have a blessed evening. Yeah.
You too. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, golly, that's tremendous information. I'm glad I picked it up on Spirit Daily. It's on there.
Well,
and Michael Brown.
If you read the book, there's actually, as a Catholic, you'll probably appreciate that there's a chapter in there where I actually go to a hermitage for 3 days of total silence by myself.
Oh, wow.
And it's a Catholic, it's a Catholic driven. I actually went to a Catholic college, and so did my husband.
So did Heidi. I don't know why.
Yep, all women's Catholic college. Yeah.
Oh, not all women's, but that's hardcore. But I actually the lady who who was president of our college, Sister Thomas, she she's been very involved with our lives even since, they came to our wedding, was there at our, graduation reception and stuff like that, and has kept in touch. She read the book, and they were sharing it among, the sisters, the Benedictine sisters there. And they loved it. I was like, really? That's awesome.
This isn't a one faith has got the number on it kind of thing. But I wrote a book on Marian apparitions some years ago myself. But it's
I've had quite a few Catholics ask me if Josiah's had any experience with Mary, or any thoughts about that, or any
has he?
Yeah, he has actually. It actually wasn't when I wrote the book. It came after the book. But very, very briefly, one thing that was kind of interesting about it is he was describing about how, I would have never made this connection. I just think it's really a cool thought.
Yeah.
How Noah and Mary are actually very similar, in that both of them were promise bearers. And so the ark that Noah physically built was a womb to restart humanity, restart civilization, and Mary was actually a womb to restart rebirth.
How about that?
Through Jesus Christ.
Isn't that something?
So I thought that was really interesting. They're both.
I'm curious if Mary is as busy as Catholics believe she is.
The interesting thing though is that she's not. At least from what Josiah has said, I don't get the sense that she's like, like the fourth person on the throne or something.
Yeah.
I get the sense that she's very, like she's honored, but like not necessarily like.
Protestants rule. That's all you have to say.
No, of course they don't.
I'm just saying that because Kevin always picks on me.
But very much like a righteous. This is what Josiah said. Just like with Noah, God was looking for a righteous altar to interact with. He was a righteous person that the Spirit of God was able to interact with this righteous person to bring about this like restart essentially of civilization and humanity. And then he actually talked about like the we often think about the physical things involved with like, oh man, could the ark have really happened? Like, can people, or can all that fit in the ark? And we're thinking very logically about, this story. What he talked about was the process and the act at which Noah for that 100 years was doing what God said and building that ark. Intersected with almost like quantum physics, like it was able to supernaturally intersect with what God wanted to do, because it was more about him being obedient to be a conduit on this earth than it was about literally physically, like that ark in and of itself could have rebirthed humanity. It was like the ark was an altar. Beautiful. It was an altar of sacrifice.
Makes sense.
Well, listen, Tahni, we'll keep in touch. I know Heidi will, and I sure have enjoyed it. I really have.
Truly,
I appreciate you guys, definitely.
Yes. Oh gosh, I feel like I made a new friend. It's all good.
I know. I'm excited to read your book now, and
cool.
And keep in touch. Yeah, definitely.
Same here.
Do you want to you want to take down my email address, or do you have that?
I'm getting that from Kevin. Oh yes, I will.
Okay,
definitely.
Awesome.
And my information mine's in the book too, so you can reach out that way.
And Kevin, what was the name of your book?
It's Marian Apparitions Are Real.
Awesome. I will take a look.
Awesome.
Okay, good. Well, I guess at the end of the line on the show, Tahni, I guess we better bid you good night. And
absolutely.
Well, now next week, of course, is July 4th, and we're going to have an archive show, and then we'll
Vacation.
have to check. Well, there is that, and actually, I've got Jim Marr scheduled for the week thereafter, but we'll have to see how his health is permitting on that.
Yeah, lots of prayers needed for Jim Mars.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
I guess so. I didn't know all these issues, but I did have him scheduled, but we'll have to see on that. And I've got a Marine, retired Marine, that'll talk on some political issues after the week after that. So,
Okay.
anyhow, I guess we better head off into the night. But
Hey, guys, really great talking with you. Thanks so much.
Good night, everybody.
good night.
Bye now.
Lowe's has you covered for all those projects on your summer to-do list and will even help you save. Give your home a whole new look inside and out with $10 to $40 off paint, exterior stains, and resurfacers via rebate. And add a pop of color to your porch or patio with flowers. Get your choice 2 for $10 basic 1.5-gallon hanging baskets. All projects have a starting point. Start with Lowe's. Paint offer valid 6/21 through 7/5. Exclusions apply. Plan offer valid 6/28 through 7/5. Color and selection vary by location while supplies last. U.S. only.